Welcome back to the second installment of Dividend Discussion here on Dividend Obsession. With this new series, one of my goals is to share my passion for passive income with other dividend investors. During these interviews, we will hear the story of someone else that's doing dividends their own way. Hopefully, you, the viewer, can take something out of each of these interviews and make yourself a better dividend investor. For my second guest, please join me in welcoming Jeremy. He's another one of my friends from the Dividend Growth Investing Facebook group and has his very own dividend-focused blog at the Dividend Stockpile, which will be linked in the description down below the video. Be sure to head over there after this interview to check out the 60 plus articles he has on all kinds of topics. In this episode, we discuss things like why people seem to stumble into dividends, how long it takes to notice the dividend snowball, and plenty of other topics. So now, please enjoy the show. All right, so everybody, welcome back to another dividend discussion. I am here with my friend Jeremy. Jeremy, if you want to go ahead and give yourself a quick introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Troy. Hi, everybody. My name is Jeremy. I'm an avid dividend investor, also an option seller. You probably have seen me on Twitter and some of the Facebook groups out there. I run a blog called dividendstockpile.com. So I post a lot of stuff there about ideas, inspirations, motivation, valuation, all kinds of things related to dividend stock investing.
Perfect. Yes. And I will link both of those or anything that Jeremy's in. I'll link all that in the description at the bottom of the video. So make sure you guys check that out and show Jeremy some love. So, Jeremy, I'd like to get started with this first question of what got you into dividend investing and when did you get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think as most investors, when you first get started off, you probably aren't a dividend investor at the beginning. A lot of us have grown up knowing, total return investing. You put your money in, let it grow, and at some point in the future, you sell off your shares to live off of. And so that's really how I started with mutual funds, ETFs, things like that. Way back in the day, I started in 1999. And so that for the longest time, that was just, put money in, and eventually, hopefully, you'll have a large enough balance to retire on in the future. So about 10 years ago or so, I really started getting into individual stock investing. And with that, we started receiving certain dividend payments. And at the time, I wasn't really sure what they were. I knew that obviously it was money from the company, but I didn't really know the power of them. So it took a little while to understand that and what the benefits were of dividend investing. And about 7 years ago is when I really started digging into the dividend investing world. Started watching YouTube videos, found different blogs out there, and really just figured out that dividend investing was the style that fit for me the best, and it's the one that fit my risk tolerance and what I wanted to do. And now, as you probably can tell from some of my posts and the Facebook groups and whatnot, is my primary focus now is dividend investing.
Yeah.
So I would say hardcore about 7 years now.
So I have a question on that. So you have a similar, right? You started way before I did, but you have a similar accident. Like you accidentally discovered dividends. I was very the same. Like I had Robinhood. I think the free stock I got for signing up with Robinhood was SiriusXM, and SiriusXM for whatever reason pays a dividend, and it was a penny per share. And I remember I was doing something and I just got a little alert on my phone that said SiriusXM paid you a penny in dividends. And I was like, why did they give me money? So like, what do you think causes people to nobody see, anybody that's in the dividend world knows the power, knows they love them. They're head over heels over dividends, but why does nobody seem to discover them from the jump?
Yeah. So I think it's twofold. I think one, the financial media and our 401k providers and things like that have always pushed ETFs and mutual funds. And, accumulation is the only way to do it. You get the largest nest egg you can and then sell it off when you retire, and then you die with zero. And so that's always been what's been pushed to us for years and years, because that was just the way things were. So I think that that's a big part of it. People just don't understand that there is a different way. Income investing is a legitimate strategy, and it can provide the flexibility and options that you want later in life when you need to retire. And so I think that's the main one. The other thing is even if you do get individual dividends and you're not focused on dividends, you only see a small amount each time.
Mm-hmm.
You see, a couple of cents here, $1 there, and you're like, well, that's never going to amount to anything. So I think a lot of people just ignore it. And it's like, okay, that's great, but that's just extra bonus. That's not something I'm going to rely on.
Mm-hmm.
But if you actually focus on dividend investing and you really make it a priority, as you know, that dividend snowball really gets going pretty quickly. And before you know it, you're going to have $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month coming in dividends. And you're like, wow, that can actually pay my bills one day. So I think that's the other reason is you don't realize the power of it until you really get into it.
So two things on that. One, everybody always seems to say that dividend investing's an old person's game, which I never, I feel like the earlier you start and the more years you have for compounding, it's would be more of a young person's game. And then, the more years, like I said, the better it gets. And then also, I noticed you said that you've been really, really into dividends for 7 years. Have you noticed your own compounding snowball like really start to pick up, or like are you expecting that to do something like that soon, or has it already happened?
Yeah, it's definitely already happened. It's actually quite amazing how the snowball has really taken off. I am very aggressive in my investing. My wife and I do put a lot of money into our brokerage account to build up our dividend income. So that's definitely helped. But yeah, you can see the power of the compounding, the power of the growth. What started off as $100 a month quickly came to $500 a month and $1,000 a month. And now we're at multiple thousands every month coming in dividends. So it's absolutely made a huge difference. Our goal is to start using the dividends in about 9 years. So we're right kind of in the middle of our journey. So we're definitely starting to see the snowball picking up significantly. And back to your point about young investors, again, I think we all get drilled into our minds that things like the Apples and the Microsofts and the Nvidias and the Teslas is the way you're supposed to go when you're young. And that might work, and you probably will get some good returns. But at the end of the day, you're reliant on the market to get those returns for you. And eventually you're going to have to sell off your shares. And so that is a strategy, but dividend investing is also a very legitimate strategy. If you're starting off young, let's just say 25 or 30, and you have another 25 to 30 years for dividends to compound and to grow over time, the amount of income you're going to get is going to be thousands a month. And that can easily pay most people's bills if you really stick with it.
Yep. And that's money while you sleep, which is, and you're not working for the company. You don't have to beg for raises. It's just, I was telling Chad, I was like, it almost seems like dividend investing is a scam. Like it's almost too good to be true.
Yeah. Yeah. Until you really look at it and you can understand the math behind it and
Yeah.
like the legitimacy of it. I mean, companies have been paying dividends for years and years and years, even hundreds of years.
Yep.
So if it was a scam or, whatever, it would have been found out and shut down already. But
Yeah.
it's legitimate. You're owner of the company.
Yep.
The company makes a profit. They share it with you. That's as simple as it gets.
Yeah. And it's the if you wanted to call it a scam, the scammy part is it takes time. It's not you're not going to buy it and then it's a GameStop and you're just rich tomorrow. Like it doesn't work like that. You have to have patience, understand your methods and why you do what you do, and really, really, hunker down and, make it work. So
yeah, I always joke with people, it's either going to take a lot of time or a lot of money or both to
yeah,
be a dividend investor.
yeah, exactly.
So you choose,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
time definitely helps a lot.
Well, and then the people that don't make any decisions at all, they just have no time and no money. So that's
Exactly.
the worst of both worlds. So,
but then what are you going to do when you're 50, 60 years old and you have to rely on government subsidies and, things like that?
Yeah.
Like you just have to get started.
Yep, exactly. Take control of your own future. I like it. So, okay, so you might be able to. There might be an actual answer for this. So the next question is, what type of investor would you say when you first started?
Yeah. So when I absolutely first started, it was completely head in the sand. I don't really know what's going on, but people tell me I should invest, and so let's pick this mutual fund. And back in the day, it was very high expenses. I said I started in 1999. To do a single trade was $20 every time you trade, anytime you buy, anytime you sell. And then eventually went down to $9.99 and $4.99, and now it's luckily free. So when you first start off, it was very expensive to be an individual stock investor. So the way most people did it is just buy into mutual funds. You put in $500 or $100 a week, whatever you have, and then it just gets added to the pot. But you don't really think about it. You don't really do the research behind it. It's kind of just set it in there and hope one day something comes of it. So that's really how I started. But then as I advanced in my career and started doing research and understanding, oh, this individual company that my wife works for, they pay a dividend. Oh, this company that I buy products from, they pay a dividend. Oh, that's neat. And then you just kind of go down the rabbit hole and you just understand that as an owner of a company that you can get paid for it. And that's an excellent feeling.
Yeah, I almost feel so I do a couple annoying things that the wife tells me about. So when I'm walking around outside and I just find change on the ground, I will pick it up and yell dividend out loud,
That's
which
awesome.
which is pretty fun for me. And then also when we're watching TV and you see an advertisement for AbbVie or Procter and Gamble or Apple or Microsoft or whoever it is, I'm just like, they pay a dividend. They paid it. It's almost like,
Absolutely.
it seems like almost everybody pays a dividend when you actually like know what it is. And then growing up, you maybe I'm just more attuned to it now, but I always hear doing such and such will pay you dividends in the future, and nobody ever connects the dots there. You're just like, okay, like what are dividends? Like everybody
Yep.
always says this, but nobody ever, gets into it. So that's always fun for me. But
Yeah, I'm the same way. My wife is probably tired of hearing me talk about dividends. And I talk to my kids about dividends and
yeah,
all the companies that pay you, and like, oh, you're a part owner of this company because we bought you, 1/4 of one share. Like,
yep,
you're still an owner, and
yep.
it's pretty cool to think of it that way.
Yeah, I
But
have
yeah,
he's gonna be 5 months in a couple weeks, in 2 weeks, I think, and he's got his own little account. And right now it's just I think he has VOO and QQQM. So
yeah,
just the ETS for now, and then once he gets a little bit older, when it gets his birthday money, we'll be like, okay, what do you want to buy? And like I'll let him explain to me what he wants to buy, and I'll tell him why it might be a good or a bad idea, and we'll learn it that way. So
yeah. I do
um
the same thing with my kids. I have 4 kids, and my 2 older ones, they pick their own stocks because they're aware of what's out there,
mhm.
and I let them, pick from a list type of thing. Like I always, of course, screen it with them and make sure that it's a good stock. But my younger two, they're too young to understand, so they're just in ETFs as well right now.
Yeah, it's a lot of work managing your stuff and the kids and
Yeah,
everything else. And you got the
yeah.
blog going on. So, okay. So next question, short and sweet. What
Mhm.
keeps you going?
Mm. The optionality of dividends. Like I've done the projections. I've talked to people who are living off the dividends or about to live off the dividends. I've run the numbers. I understand what it can become. And just knowing that if I put in the effort, I put in the time and the money, I'm dedicated to this, which I am, I know in 7, 10, 15 years that I don't have to work anymore. And the most important part is I don't have to sell off my shares to live.
Exactly.
And so that I'm going to be able to pass it on to my children, and they can have intergenerational wealth. And if they do a good job, my grandkids will be able to use this money, and it's going to be in our family forever. And some people who don't have, family or don't care to pass it on, there's always charities you can donate to.
Yep.
Could you imagine setting up a dividend portfolio for your charity that pays them $50,000 a month just in dividends that they can use for whatever charity? I mean, that would be huge to any organization. So those are the dreams, those are the ideas that you can have with dividend investing. And so that's really what keeps me motivated, knowing that I have the options to retire early. I have the options to let my wife retire early if she wants to. We can cut back on our employment, only work part-time because our dividends are supplementing our income. So that's really what keeps me driving. It's just the excitement and the knowledge that it is going to happen.
Yeah, it's really that financial freedom too. That's what we're
Hmm.
all striving for is if you want to quit your job, if you don't want to quit your job, if you want to work a lower job because you can, you're not worried about the income, but you want to do something that brings you joy.
Yep.
It's all about that kind of stuff. And like I said, I preach it to everybody that's got ears. I talk about dividends probably far too much, but I really just try to, get people to understand that like, I'm 28 right now, 65, 67. Is Social Security going to be a thing when I'm that old?
Hmm.
Who knows? So, taking control of my own future, for the family and all that stuff is really important for me as well.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And I applaud you for starting so young. I'm 42 myself, and I would have loved to have started 15, 20 years beforehand.
yeah,
I just think back of what I could be doing right now if I was really dedicated like you are. You know, I'm trying to make up time because I started a little bit later when it comes to dividend. Even though I was investing before then, I wasn't as dedicated as I am now, and it sounds like you are as well. So
yeah.
if I could go back and start 20 years ago, I'd probably be retired right now.
Yeah, well, one, I appreciate that, so thank you for that. And then two, I talked to a guy. I said this in the episode with Chad. I talked to a guy at the gym, and I was like, "Hey, man, like, because he was 19, and I'm like, dude,
Mhm.
if you can let one random stranger teach you anything, just invest. Even if you just get started with a VOO or SCHD or something like that, those pay dividends. And like I said, it's those accidental dividends that just come up and you're just like, why did I get $30 this month from this company? I didn't sell anything. If anything, now I have more shares. You're like, what's going on here? And you start looking into it, and you know, that's where the magic happens. So
Yeah.
okay, so the next one, what is the biggest dividend related mistake you made, and what did you learn?
Yeah. So there's two of them. So one of them kind of goes back to the beginning. When I first started, I did not realize what dividends were. As I mentioned before, I didn't understand the power of them. And in my brokerage account, it did not have drip on. So the money for probably a few years was just accumulating in cash and not being reinvested into more shares. And so I missed out on probably 2 to 3 years worth of reinvestment and growth on my share count, because instead of it having it on drip and automatically being bought more shares, it was just sitting there. And that money was used to buy just random things that, like growth investing or like a random penny stock, that I came across. Like I didn't really understand what was going on. So that means my first mistake is not reinvesting the dividends at the beginning. The second and the more recent one is borrowing other people's conviction. So when you're buying individual companies, especially if you're active on social media, you see and hear 50 different tickers a day of people touting XYZ company and ABC, this company, that company. And you can get excited with it, and you can get that fear of missing out, or you're like, oh, the earnings were great, hop in now, the dividend. But if you don't have the conviction to hold on to stock when it goes down, you're missing the point, because this is a long-term game. You have to be willing to hold it for the long term to see that compounding, and you have to understand what you're buying. So there was one company, and I mentioned this on another call with someone else, is IIPR, Innovative Industrial Properties. It's the medical marijuana greenhouse REIT, which I like the industry. I think it's a future industry, but I really didn't have conviction on it. I bought it during like the weed hype, if you will. And obviously I bought it at a price that was unreasonable. And so it's down probably 50% right now. And it's not something that I would put more money into right now. And so that's my big takeaway, is you have to, one, know what you're getting into, understand the valuation, and really have conviction in the name in order to hold it for the long time, especially when there's a downturn. It's easy to hold a stock when things are going well, but when things aren't going well and you don't have conviction, you'll more than likely sell and then take the loss. Yeah, so that would be my second one.
Yeah, and I that's one thing I try to do with my videos on YouTube, especially with like the creating a criteria that you can understand yourself. Because that's really important. Like that's one thing I didn't have when I first started. I was just like, oh, like these are all household names, like your Targets and your Walmarts and your Verizons and AT&Ts and all the things. But like, I didn't have like, my stocks need to meet X, Y, and Z. And as long as they still meet X, Y, and Z, I still like those companies. And you can get as simple or complicated as you wish, just as long as you know what you're looking for and that each of your stocks need to pass that criteria, that little checklist that you set yourself. I think that really helps. Because that FOMO is real. My example of that is I just sold NVIDIA like Friday of last week. So here we are. Yeah, NVIDIA is up 25%, I think, after hours, which is good. Yeah. Like I bought NVIDIA because of the group that we're in on Facebook. I was, just got into the group. I heard a lot of people talking about NVIDIA and all their gains and stuff. I bought it. It went in the toilet because, of course, I know they were waiting for Troy to buy it, and then that's what happened. So I bought it. It went down. I dollar cost averaged. I got my cost basis under $200. And then it went up over 300. And then I was like, okay, like this doesn't, I only bought it because of the group. It doesn't meet my dividend growth rate history. It beats the market, but it doesn't meet the streak of increasing their dividend, because they don't. Their dividend's almost embarrassing. Like it's annoying that they pay 4 cents per share.
I don't even know why they do that.
Yeah, like just keep it. Like at that point, like they're just trying to capture the dividend group. That's what they're trying to do. They're just like, hey, if we pay a dividend, then it's a dividend payer and people will do it. So, but yeah, so they pay a 4 cent dividend and then they don't have a dividend. So their dividend growth rate and dividend streak is not quality, like my standards. So I was like, okay, I was up like 57% on it, which I would have been up way more. But I was like, all right, let me take my gains. And I ended up using it to buy Costco, which met all my criteria. So I was like, I don't think it's a loss. Like it's an opportunity cost, but I think I made a good, like in the long term, I think it'll be an okay decision. So
yeah, and you can't second guess yourself, because who would have thought it would go up 25% on earnings in one day?
yeah,
If they would have missed their numbers, it could have gone down 20%. So you can't look back. You just have to, you made a profit, you put it into another very high quality company that met your needs, met your criteria, and you just have to move forward. There've been plenty of ones that I sold too early and then moved on to something else, but you can't go back to it. So why stress about it?
Yeah, I agree. So, okay, so next thing, actually, this kind of goes into that next thing. So, your biggest selling regret or your biggest buying brag?
Oh man. Okay, so my regret is somewhat dividend related, but not really. So back a few years ago, there's a sector ETF for technology.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's XLK or something like that. It's whatever the technology sector one is. I had bought it. The market tanked. I think it was around COVID. And I was, obviously down. I was like, okay, as soon as it gets back to even, I'm going to sell out, because again, to your point, it's not really what I'm focused on. It doesn't have a large dividend. It's more of a growth name. And so I ended up selling it at like $230 a share or something like that. And then of course, we all know what happened after COVID. The market went crazy.
Yeah.
And it was like $350 per share. And of course I sold it at 230. So I didn't take a loss, but I missed out on all those gains. So that was my biggest regret, is not holding on to that, because I should have known that technology would have been just fine.
Yeah.
But I got scared. I was like, oh my goodness, let me just get out of this one. And so I missed out on the amount of shares I had. I probably missed out on $10,000 or $20,000 worth of gains.
Oh, yikes.
It was rough. So like, again, as I said before, it hurt at the time, but at the end of the day, I made the decision. I had to live with the decision.
Mm-hmm.
I moved on. I focused more on dividend stocks, and my dividend income grew with that money. So at the end of the day, it's not a bad thing, but obviously I could have made a lot more money if I would have kept it on there. So that was that. My biggest brag, I have two. So my very favorite company, the one I like the most, is BlackRock, ticker BLK. I bought that, God, it must have been in December 2018. There was a 1 month dip in the stock market. Everything tanked in December that year for some reason. It went down like 20% in a month. And I was just buying like crazy. And one of the names that I had picked was BlackRock. And I bought it extremely cheap. And it's up like 150% since I bought it. So
Nice.
That's definitely a good one. Another really big one that I did well on so far is Broadcom. So AVGO. My cost base is like $290 and it's like $660 or something like that.
Nice.
So yeah. So there's definitely, so it kind of goes back to why a young person can still be a dividend investor, is because you still get capital appreciation too. It's not an either or. I've made a ton of money on capital gains from some of my dividend stocks, and they pay me. So like you can have both. And those are two examples of times where you absolutely can make even market beating returns by being a dividend investor.
Yeah. And that's one thing. I know Chad talks about that a lot because he's the total growth investor. And it's very important to keep that in mind, is your total return. Cause like I said before, you have companies that'll just pay ridiculously high dividends, but the quality of the company is not there. And then they'll, give you $75 in your left hand and take $100 from your right hand. They're like, oh, don't look over here. Like, just look at the dividends. So that's really, really important. And then another thing that's so great about one of the many things that's so great is like dividends. You hold the company will appreciate. And then as the company appreciates, you're still getting dividends. If the company goes down, you're still getting dividends. So you're getting paid while you wait for it to do whatever it's going to do. And then so I look at this every day, because I buy every day. I do my dollar cost average every day on Fidelity. And I'll look at it. Today was a red day. So it was cool because everything I was going to buy anyway was down like 0.5%, 2%, whatever. And I was getting deals. So yeah, the money I had in there was, lost some value, but now I get the stuff I was going to buy anyway for cheaper. And then it's the inverse. Like other days where I look at it and everything's green, I'm like, oh, this stinks. I have to pay 2% more. But then all the dollars I already had in there working for me are now 2% more valuable. So it's really it's a cool thing because like it's almost like a win-win either way. Like either the money you had in there is getting more valuable, or now you're getting stuff that you wanted anyway at a cheaper cost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, at the end of the day, especially for dividend investors, we're not planning on selling these shares anytime soon, if ever. So in 20 years, is it really going to matter if it's 2% more today that
Yeah.
you bought one portion of your dollar cost average at a higher rate?
Yep.
No. 20 years, you're not even going to know or care.
Yeah.
So yeah, just be consistent. I do mine every Monday. I make buys every Monday. And so it's the same thing, whether the market's up or the market's down, I just buy my portion.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, 20 years from now, it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah. I made that video called Stock Price Doesn't Matter for that reason. Like it was the fractional shares and the ability to dollar cost average. I'm like, you can do those things. And yeah, it's important to, understand the value of a company and stuff. But if you're in it for the long haul and you're, dollar cost averaging, you can buy something at the peak and over the long haul, if it's a quality company and it goes up and to the right, like you hope your companies do, that's just your dollar cost average will go down as the stock goes down. And then as it goes up, it'll go up with it. And it's just a nice little balance. Cause I know so many people that are like, oh yeah, even in our groups, they're like, I wish I would have bought Apple back when it was this. And then they're like, I still don't own Apple because I'm waiting for it to drop to this. I'm like, so you're missing out on a great company, dividends and capital appreciation because you want a certain price.
Yeah.
I'm like, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah. And that's another reason I never do limit prices either when I'm making my buys. I just buy at the market.
Yep.
Because I could easily miss out on a great deal over a 10-cent price difference in the stock. If I set my limit price at $50.10 and it never got to 50.10 and it just kept shooting up, I would miss out on the stock.
Yeah.
So I just buy whatever the market's giving me that day. And, at the end of the day, the portion that you're making a dollar cost average today is going to be a minuscule part of your total investment over your lifetime. Let's just say you're putting $100 in, but you're also going to put $100 this month and every other month, and then you're going to raise it to $200 a month. So that one purchase that you make is going to be insignificant in the grand scheme of things. So don't stress over the exact dollar amount of the shares when you buy it. Just buy.
Yep. Yeah. I literally take so I have a bracket or a table at the bottom of mine that tells me like the goal allocations of each of my stocks. I know you have every stock, I think. And I think I have 11 now. So I can't have less than, I like to keep it less than 5%, but I can't do that because I only have 11 stocks. So I literally like, okay, I want this stock at 11, this stock at 10, this stock at 8 or whatever. And then it divides the money that it would take to get that to that percentage. And I then divide it by the number of days that are left in the month. And I just do it every day. Nice. So it's really simple. I think I was doing like every Tuesday because in my head I was like, okay, everybody else is probably doing Mondays, so the price goes up and they might sell on Fridays or whatever. So I was like, let me do Tuesday. And then it seemed like every Tuesday the market was up for like the next 4 weeks. And I was like, okay, can't do Tuesdays. I was like, what about Thursdays? And I messed around with that for a little bit. I was like, I'm just going to do every day. Like it's littler amounts. Like sometimes if I don't put a lot of money in that month, it might be $3 here, $4 here. It's whatever. Like it's free trading. So who cares? Just buy them when you can. So, all right. Next one would be if you could invest in one dividend stock for the rest of your life, what would it be and why? And I'm going to take away the precursor because Chad cheated. It can't be an ETF.
Oh man. No, obviously that's the easy answer. So I have a couple, but let's see. I would be absolutely comfortable with investing in Pepsi.
Okay.
As my one stock. It gives a good current yield. It gives great dividend growth. It's been paying dividends for over 50 years, raising dividends for over 50 years. They have a diversified business model. It's something that everyone can afford. Everyone can afford a bag of chips or, soda, and people are going to always want those products. Some people say, oh, they're not healthy. Well, Pepsi has healthy products too.
Yeah.
So I think that would be, if I had to come down to it, and I never would just buy one stock, but I think that would be it. Huh. The second one would be BlackRock. Again, that's my favorite. They're the behemoth in the ETF markets. They own the iShares products. And so they're everywhere. And so they're the 800-pound gorilla, if you will. So I'd be comfortable buying them as well.
Yeah, those are two good answers. I don't think I would have expected. I thought you would take a REIT.
Well, those are definitely good, but a lot of times the REITs don't have the growth that another type of company has, just based on having to finance the buildings, and a lot of the REITs don't have a high dividend growth, but Pepsi has that balance.
What is Pepsi's dividend growth rate?
I believe it's right around 9 or 10%.
Yeah,
I can check
that's
real
one of
quick.
my goals for my portfolio is I like double digit dividend growth rates over like 3,
Yeah,
5, 10 years. Just because like that's a like when you're accounting for capital appreciation, you're also getting 10% from the dividend, which is great.
absolutely.
So
And when you're younger, absolutely, that totally makes sense because you have the time on your side that the dividend growth can do it. Pepsi is a little under 8%, so it's a little bit lower than I thought. But yeah,
well, that's still impressive for a company that's paid for 50 years in a row or
exactly. And
plus
it's
50
a
plus.
consumer staple. It's not like high tech company that's growing gangbusters. They sell soda and chips, and like it's not a super growth market. But the fact that they've been able to do it for so long and still have a decent increase is beating inflation in most years.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't complain.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so this is off script. This is one I wanted to ask you earlier, but I forgot. So
Mm,
one thing I'm gonna have an issue with, and I'm gonna ask probably everybody that does this because I want somebody to give me like the answer that changes my life. So no pressure. How will you know when enough is enough with the dividends? Like, how do
yeah.
you know like there's a certain number that comes in, and because you get to experience the compounding effect and the dividend snowball, where if you wait one more year, you know it's going to be even more, and one more year, it's even more. So like, how do you know when enough is enough?
Yeah, it's actually funny. I on Twitter I had posted a repost of one of my blogs from back in the day, and the title of it was "Enough." And the basis of the whole blog post is how do you know when enough is enough? You always People always want more and more and more, but are you delaying your satisfaction of life by continuing to want more? Like when is enough enough?
Mm-hmm.
When is your dividends enough? When is your working years enough? What is enough? Can you have the lifestyle you want earlier than if you just kept wanting more and more? So for me, when it comes to dividends, I have a very specific number that I'm looking for.
Okay.
So mine's two parts. One is to let my wife retire. And so we know how much of her paycheck we use on a monthly basis and how much we save. So once we get to the point where we can supplement her or replace her income, she has the ability to quit working. And so that's my primary goal. So that's definitely my enough. When we hit that number, I would feel comfortable. The second part of it is for us to both retire early. So the goal is for me to be done in, what is it, 14 years, 13 years from now. And so we have a number that we would need to replace both of our incomes, and we're perfectly fine with that. We're very frugal people. We save probably 40 to 45% of our income,
Very nice.
and so we know what our number is, and we know that that's enough. We have goals of being able to take our kids to Europe for a summer if we want to, and we don't have to worry about work. We want to be able to, spend time with them and to afford trips and live a life that we can hang out with our grandkids eventually. So we know what we're shooting for. We know
Mhm.
what our life is going to look like afterwards, and we know what the number is to get there.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing, and that's the cool thing with dividend. Another cool thing about dividends is like you can, now you can't predict the future. Like I don't know if all my companies that are my portfolio averages a 10% dividend growth rate for all my stocks. Thanks because I got rid of Nvidia and their disgusting 4 cent dividend. But so like it's 10%. I can't guarantee that 22 years from now when I plan to retire that I'm going to be averaging that.
Yeah.
But you can project it out based off of current numbers. You can even lower those current numbers a little bit and say, okay, like what if everything's cut in half from now on? All
Yeah.
my companies still just say keep pace with the market and give me a 5% raise, which is I'm pretty sure more than VOO. I don't think VOO is given 5% dividend raises per year. I'm not sure about that, but
Yeah, I'd have to look.
but yeah, so it's really one of those things. But like I said, I know me being competitive and just also, I guess you can call it greedy. Like I do want like it's going to be like okay, if I can get the year 22 and make $67,000 a year in dividend income, but I can get the year 23 and make 80,000 or 24 and make 100,000. Like at what point am I like okay, like I don't need to do and it really does depend on like if I'm still at the current job I'm at and I really like it or stuff like that. If it's like one of those like I can't wait to get out, like I don't care kind of things, then it'll be that. But yeah, I don't know. That's just something I know I'm gonna have an issue with. So
Yeah, and I think it definitely changes as you get older and as you get closer to that final date, if you
mhm.
will. For you, I mean, let's just say you have 20 more years in the workforce. it's hard to visualize what your lifestyle is going to look like. Are you going to have one child? Are you going to have multiple children? Are the children going to be at the house, out of the house by then? Are you going to want to live in a different area? So there's a lot of unknowns when you're 20 years out. For us, we're starting to see and formalize what our lifestyle is going to look like, because we're only 9 to 13 years away from that being the case. So we know how old our kids are going to be. We know where we want to live. We know generally what our expenses are. So as you get closer to that time frame of when you think you'll be done, you'll have a better sense on when enough is enough.
Cool. I really hope it does, because that's the other thing that makes it really hard for like retirement planning in general, is like you do have to do it. Like if you're going to be ahead of the game and truly ahead of the game, you have to do it before the picture's even you don't even know there's a picture. Like, and that's really hard to do, is like, hey, do this for your 65-year-old self. But like, I don't even know what I'm going to do at 65.
Yeah,
like
none of us do.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's literally like I'm 28 and you want me to plan 30 years in the future, longer than I've been alive. I'm like, that doesn't. Can't compute. I don't know. So
there's so many variables in there, and there's so many things that can happen in your life that can happen in the world. I mean, just think 4 years ago, we never would have thought we would be where we are today.
Yeah.
Imagine another 30 years. The technology would be different. Wars might happen. Economies might tank. Other countries might become the global power. There's so many unknowns that you can't plan for. So all you can really do is do your best, have a plan, and your plan can change over time, but at least get started, do something, and then change as you go.
Yeah. What if we get like universal basic income? Who knows? Like AI takes over, does most of the jobs, and we have to, do whatever. So that's why Nvidia is up 25%. Anyway, so okay. So my next and last question would be, do you have any advice for someone just getting started in dividend investing? And if your advice is to just get started, what else do you have?
Yeah, for sure. So personal finances, personal, as they always say. So everyone's going to have a different path, but I would say there's really two things. Get your financial self in order, get a budget, make sure that you have excess in your budget to invest. You really want to treat your investments as a bill, as opposed to I'll invest what's left over. So for my wife and I, we have a set dollar amount that we've built into our budget, saying on a monthly basis and an annual basis, this is our number that we want to hit in investments. And every single Monday, I make that investment no matter what else is going on. So we pay ourselves first, if you will. So build a budget that you can have that excess to invest on. If that starts off at $100 a month, at least you're doing something. But try and find that excess in your budget to make it happen. If you need to, find a way to get more money coming in, that's one thing. If you need to cut your expenses, that's another thing. But find the excess money to invest, because you'll never be able to retire, never be able to get ahead if you don't have that. So once you have the money to invest, the second thing is to get a plan. You really do need a plan. You can't just haphazardly just throw money into the market and expect something to happen. You really need to know what you're investing in and why you're investing it, whether that's one or two ETFs that you want to focus on, or if it's individual companies. You need to know what your goals are and what you're shooting for. Because if you just buy this stock because you heard about it, or you saw this one on some Reddit board, or you'll never have a cohesive investment strategy. So that would be the next thing, and that plan can change. I call it an investor policy statement. So every year I look at my policy statement to see, okay, am I meeting my goals? Am I focused on the right things? Do I have the proper diversification? Am I investing in the companies that make sense? Do I have the dividend growth that I want? So have a plan in place, and that will help guide your future decisions and your future investments as you build up your account.
Yeah, I like all those too. That's very similar to what Chad said too. Chad was talking about like, making sure you're getting out of debt and making sure, because it's just really important. Reduce your expenses, increase your income. So when you and your wife are putting your set aside money every month, so say it's like $500, and say it's going to be tight that month, what's the first thing you guys typically cut from? Where pretending that the $500 investment into your monthly account is a no, like you can't cut from that. What else, what do you guys do? Do you guys eat out less, or how's that work?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we're very frugal people, and we have our expenses pretty low. So our fixed expenses, like our mortgage, like our cell phone, things like that, those are well covered. We don't have any problems there. What we get into trouble with personally is eating out
Mhm.
and groceries. Those are our two splurges, if you will. And so that would absolutely be the first place, is the eating out. Because I mean, by bringing your lunch to work, 2 days of the week out of three, you're already saving 40% of that budget.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to make those changes to those discretionary buckets. And for us, eating out is definitely it.
Yeah, and a lot of I'm into the fitness space, and I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, eating, buying groceries and eating and cooking all your meals and stuff's very expensive." And I'm like, it's expensive initially when you have to go and buy a 10, like we have 10-pound tubes of ground beef that I buy like every
Hmm.
week, and like
Hmm.
those range anywhere between like $32 to $39 just for that one item, which is a lot. But when you
Yeah.
figure I can eat for a whole week
Yeah.
and I eat it 2 times a day, 6 ounces each time. So I'm eating 12 ounces of ground beef every day for a week, and
Hmm.
I get that through, and it's $40. And then I get
Yeah.
a box of minute rice just because it's easy to make. It's $4, and that's like 2 weeks worth of food right there. So when
Yeah.
you actually like up front, that's already $45 just on 2 items, and it's just for me.
Yeah.
So like
Ma-
it gets expensive with that, but like when you actually, break it out and like you're packing lunches and stuff like that, you save so much money.
Yeah. Imagine if you went to Chipotle instead to get your protein.
Mhm.
You're going to spend 10, 12, $13 on a burrito and a drink.
Yep.
So when you think about that, in compared to how much you're buying your meat and your meals at home, like, you're saving so much money doing it that way.
Yeah, and if it helps people, for anybody watching, to do that, like when you do go out and you buy those groceries, like figure out how long it takes you to go through that and then
Mhm.
divide it by that many days.
Yeah.
So I can go through, I'm like, okay, $40 and I eat it twice. So I basically take it divided by seven, divided by 14, and then it's not that expensive. Like
Yeah.
let me know where you're going out to eat and eating for that much. You're not.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, you
yeah,
can't even
unless
go
you
to McDonald's
yeah,
for that at
exactly,
this point.
exactly, and then you don't even know what percent that ground beef is. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, so I mean, that's really all the questions I had. If you want to plug any of your stuff, you can go ahead and feel free to do so. And then we can call it quits.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so again, I've been working on my blog for about a year and a half now. It's dividendstockpile.com. I try to post, at least an article a week. So definitely take a look, check it out, add a comment if you have anything you want to add to it. I would really appreciate that. Otherwise, you can find me on Twitter. It's a div stockpile is my handle. I'm on there quite a lot. I'm also part of a lot of the dividend investing Facebook groups. So definitely reach out anytime. One thing I will say is that I do offer free one-on-one sessions for anyone who's interested in learning how to be a dividend investor. Also, anyone who's interested in doing option selling, I'm more than happy to sit down with you for 30 minutes and talk through whatever you have on your mind. So definitely go to the blog, submit a request, and we'll set something up.
That's very cool. Yeah, I was wanting to look into options because I know a lot of people that, especially on the dividend pages, they're just like, okay, I made this much in dividends this month and this much in options. And I'm like, all right, you guys got me, you got me a
Yeah,
little intrigued over here. But
yeah, yeah.
I am going to wait to learn any of that stuff until the YouTube slows down, which I'm hoping that doing these interviews, there's minimal editing on these interviews, which
Mhm.
I typically spend, 5 to 10 hours a week editing videos. So that would save me a lot of time, and then I have time to learn things. But
Yeah,
yeah, Jeremy, it's been a blast. I appreciate all your time. I appreciate all your wisdom. I will have this video up on Monday. I'll share it on the page, and we will, you'll get famous. We'll get famous. I'll send everybody over to Dividend Stockpile, and
I
we'll go from
appreciate
there.
that. Yeah,
So,
and of course, I'll share the video on all the socials. So hopefully, we'll get some traction for you as well. So I really appreciate you having me on. I love talking about this stuff. Happy to come on in the future if you ever want to talk more. And then again, I really appreciate your inviting me over here.
yeah, if I get some good questions, I'll have I'll go back through my list and get everybody back in here. So I appreciate it.
Awesome, cool. Thanks so much.
Yep, thank you. Thank you all for watching today's interview. Please be sure to head over to Dividend Stockpile to check out all the articles that Jeremy writes and show him some love. As always, the best way to show me some love is to like the video, share it with your friends and family. Make sure you guys are leaving a comment down below, and then subscribe and ring the bell so you guys don't miss any of my other dividend related content and Dividend Discussion interviews. Lastly, if you would like a chance to be in an episode of Dividend Discussion, reach out to me via email at dividendobsession@gmail.com and I'll be in touch. But until next time, see ya.